Welcome to Unit 6 of AI for Marketing and Sales. My name is Dan Gretsch. I'm the CEO and founder of BizHack Academy, and I'm here with Jeff Cooper of Saltbox and Nicole Donnelly of AI Smart Marketing. And today we're going to be talking about AI for content strategy and SEO. Don't worry if you don't know what content strategy and SEO is or why it's helpful to growing a business. We're going to define those terms for you and then show you how AI can turbocharge those efforts. As with every session, we're really trying to accomplish 5 things with you. Number 1 is we want to give you the context that any business leader must have to be able to use AI responsibly and intelligently and strategically. Number 2 is we're going to give you the skills so that a marketing doer is not just creating random acts of marketing, but actually doing strategic work that's going to help them grow. We're going to introduce you to the tools, the Jasper AIs, the ChatGPTs that will help you actually implement AI in your business. We're going to talk about the challenges, and there are a lot of challenges. Google has learned that to the cost of more than $100 billion. And then we're going to talk about the inspiration. We hope that you come out of these sessions feeling like just energized and ready to try this out and experiment. This is a course that's really designed for 2 people, the business leader, the driven entrepreneur, the executive, and then the marketing doer, the person who's actually going to be using these tools on a day-to-day basis to do more, better, faster. We are in Unit 6 of 7 for this initial set of master classes and lessons. In Units 2, 3, and 5, we're really focused on the doing, that marketing doer, really helping you with using it to create and generate text, images, and audio. Today, we're now going a level up, and we're going to talk about how do you use AI to help you develop a strategy for creating content, whether it's audio, video, images, or text. How do you make sure that it's going to be indexed and findable through search? How do you make sure that it's answering the needs and questions of your ideal customer? And how do you make sure that all this activity that you're now able to do, like really what AI does is it's like a force multiplier. It allows you to do more. The more is not necessarily better. 0 times a million is still 0. And so how do we make sure that every incremental piece of content and the higher productivity you're going to be at is actually going to work for growing your business? Otherwise, it's really in futility. So we have 3 learning objectives. The first is, there is this misconception that Google is losing. And this is driven by fellow journalists of mine who like a good storyline. We like to see the giants fall. The truth of the matter is Google is experiencing is something known as the innovator's dilemma. It's a big challenge for a company with a large incumbent business, which is search, which is going to be threatened and challenged by generative AI. But Google is the pioneer of much of this technology, and don't count them out, and don't buy into the line that Google is getting beaten by Microsoft. That's a PR line that Microsoft is promoting. We're going to talk about why we encourage you to think openly about what Google has, but also to just show the risks and help you understand why they're struggling, because they really are struggling. Look. Sorry about that. Let me see. Second, we're going to talk about the basics of SEO and content. We're not going to assume any knowledge here. We want you to really feel like you have access to the fundamental knowledge you need to understand and follow what we're going to do today. This is kind of at the core of what we call a laddered curriculum. In the laddered curriculum, we start without assuming any knowledge and we build up from there. And one of the things that I'm going to do now is I'm going to give you a quick summary of what's come up till now so that you can be kind of oriented to what we're going to be talking about. But we will move quickly and we will ladder up quickly to some pretty sophisticated places by the end of the day. And then finally, Our amazing Nicole is going to show you some demoing of how these tools work in practical and simple ways to do some really profound and often expensive jobs in terms of your marketing strategy around defining brand voice and your story brand. So let's get going. We're going to start with the homework review. As you guys may recall, your homework after the audio video section was to experiment with one of the AI tools that we introduced today. For example, making an IG reel or a YouTube short from a blog post or another video. And what I would love for you guys to do is jump in the chat right now and share with us in a line or two about your experience building and experimenting with AI for audio and video. And I'm going to put Jeff on the spot for a sec. Jeff, I know you are an avid experimenter, playing with audio and video tools in preparation. For last week's session, you were a dancing avatar. What, if anything, in the last couple of weeks have you done that maybe you haven't shared with us yet that really kind of aligns with your experiments and where you're having fun with the tools?
Sure. Well, to be honest, some of the most fun I have isn't always the most lucrative in terms of my business. One of my favorite things to do is I use a tool called 11 Labs to clone my voice. And I've been using it to send my mother pre-recorded messages that I can just type with ChatGPT and then send her a little love with my voice. And it's a little bit uncanny valley and it creeps her out a little bit, but that makes it extra special to me. And I have a lot of fun kind of trolling my family with these tools.
It's funny. Last week, we talked about deepfake Drake and how, a really talented audio producer was able to create a song that's frankly better than anything Drake has produced in the last 5 years. And the flip side of that, of course, is there is a very sad story of parents who paid a ransom because they got a voicemail from their child saying, I've been kidnapped. And if they had thought to just pick up their phone and call their child's cell phone, he would have picked up because he wasn't kidnapped, because that was a deep fake. So there's real, the AI safety thing is not to be trifled with. And everything that we've seen to date is 1.0. And what's to come if this technology is not, if policy guardrails aren't put and this technology is allowed to run amok as it has up until now, it's going to get pretty ugly. And then the flip side of the deepfake fear, of course, is if Donald Trump had that recording that had him saying kind of crude things about a woman were to come out today, it's very likely he would have called that a deepfake. And so you're going to see people who are taking real things and saying they're fake, and of course you're going to see fake things that are being shown as real. And the ability for us to distinguish is going to have to be developed. There's a great example of Photoshop and how when the Photoshop technology was developed, you were able to create image-based deepfakes. And so we had to learn how to begin recognizing something that's Photoshopped. And this is this concept that Nicole always talks about, which is the source of truth, right? And how do we validate that that's a real video or a real audio recording versus a deep fake? Are there signatures? Are there ways that we can do that? All that technology is incipient and very much being figured out. And there's going to be a really bumpy period between now and whenever this stuff has settled down. Last week in Congress, the founder of OpenAI begged Congress people to begin building policy and legislation around this, because he recognizes that we are weeks or months away, if nothing changes, from a major catastrophe. And it could be as simple as, the son of a senator being kidnapped. It could be, impacting in the upcoming presidential election. It's coming if we don't do anything as a country and as a world about mitigating some of these risks. Europe is way ahead of us on this. The Biden administration, even before ChatGPT, had put a blueprint for what this policy could look like. But we want to be really upfront about the risks and the possibilities that audio and video in particular create. So let's talk now a little bit about AI and you. And thanks to you guys who participated in the poll. We're going to be closing this poll in a few minutes. This poll that we're doing right now is really helping us guide what our next steps look like in June and beyond. And so if you could please take a minute and answer the poll, we'd really appreciate it. In the meantime, we wanted to talk a little bit about AI and you up to now, and then we'll send a poll to get your last kind of touch point before we share the progress that you guys have made over these last 6 sessions. And so AI and you, we're looking at 4 questions. The first is, have you used an AI tool in either personal, business, or both? And when we started, many of you had not used AI for personal or business. That percentage has jumped, and you can see now that the majority of you are using it for both. You know, one of my favorite use cases is AI for bedtime stories. And my son and I, who's 3, we're having a blast co-creating bedtime stories about diggers and, you know, different trucks. You know, it's really fun. We bring in his best friends from pre-K, and we just have a lot of fun. And he loves the stories we tell. And the more specific the prompts, the better the stories that come out. ChatGPT is the dominant tool that all of us are using right now, or most of us, I should say, in our AI explorations. And you can see now that nearly more than half of us are using it minimum of 3 times a week. So this is quickly becoming a kind of go-to tool almost on a daily basis. But what's cool is that though 80% of you or 75% of you are using ChatGPT, we're seeing a dramatic increase in the use of AI in search, AI for images, and even AI for video. And so what's starting to happen is you guys are climbing up the implementation mountain, and you're starting to actually practice and play with these tools. And we hope that you're participating in this as at least some small part of the inspiration getting you to do that. And as a result, as we predicted, you're saving money and making money using AI. And what was a fraction of a percentage to start, tens of thousands of dollars are now being saved by more than 3% of you using AI tools. And one of the best ways to save money is to use it to help you develop a story brand and a brand voice. You know, you could hire a very expensive firm to do that, or you can use Jasper's inexpensive tool to support you in that. I hired a copywriter last year, $7,500 to write a brand story for my company. And I'm not saying that that work isn't important. You know, a human being needs to kind of create it, but here is a way for those of you who don't have $7,500, you can use some of these tools to build these high quality, you know, core elements of your marketing strategy at a fraction of the time and money. So I want to take a step and give you some more context on what's been going on with Google and why so many of you have you know, been hearing a lot about Google and where it is in its current AI moment. And I want to start by talking about Google is and has been for more than a decade the dominant player in search, handling well more than 90% of all search queries worldwide. Bing is at that kind of 3%, and everybody else is at 1% or less. That level of dominance means that it controls the market, the multi-billion-dollar market of search advertising. And that's its cash cow. That is still to this day where the vast majority of Google's money comes from. And this is the core of its challenge. Because what has happened is AI has emerged as a disruptive technology. We're going to talk more about that in a sec. So Google dominates search, and it has been a leader in AI research. When Sundar Pichai took over as Google's head, he said, "We are an AI first company." And they have released product after product over the years. They hired Jeffrey Hinton, the godfather of AI, to lead their research efforts. They defeated the world's top Go player, AlphaGo. That is in 2016. That is a way bigger and harder problem to solve than winning at chess. And Google engineers developed the transformer technology that paved the way for ChatGPT and other generative AI. They are the founders of the research and the ideas that really animate almost everything that's happening today. And yet, in November, a startup beat them to the punch. And it was that startup, OpenAI, backed by Microsoft, that created a product, ChatGPT, that has completely revolutionized the world. The uptake of ChatGPT in the 6 months that it has been in existence is faster than any technology in the history of humankind. 3 times faster than the uptake of TikTok, and nothing else is even close. And so we are living in a moment that is historic, and Google is kind of on the sidelines watching this all play out. We're 6 months into this, and they're tearing their hair out. When this all went down, they declared a code red because they saw, they've been planning for this. They knew this was going to come, but they never knew that it was going to come from a little nonprofit research institution backed by their #1 competitor called OpenAI. By the way, OpenAI is not a nonprofit anymore, but they did start out that way. And they've been around for, I think, 7 years, founded by folks like Elon Musk. Google engineers were providing a lot of the original technology. The idea really behind OpenAI was responsible AI, safe AI. And now, OpenAI in many ways has opened Pandora's box and started the search wars and a race that is causing for a lot of irresponsible AI and a lot of problems that are emerging from that. So I talked about the innovator's dilemma. What is the innovator's dilemma? It was developed by a Harvard professor named Clayton Christensen. He's passed away recently, but it's really about when new technologies cause great firms to fail. And there's this long history of incumbent players getting disrupted by new technologies and ultimately going out of business. And there are a lot of reasons for why it's very hard for an incumbent, the great firm, to actually attend to the new development. And the main reason is often a disruptive technology undermines your core business. And the best example I can think of this, and a company that I was able to overcome the innovator's dilemma, was when Apple released the iPhone. It completely undercut its iPod business. And they took what had been a cash cow, the iPod business, and they buried it with the iPhone. But obviously the iPhone itself created the Apple that we know today. That's a very hard thing to do, to launch a product that hurts your existing product. Google is very concerned about search advertising and the multiple billions of dollars it makes from it, and what's going to happen when you have generative AI and the advertising associated with it is less clear. So Google has basically been holding on to its powder. This lack of assertiveness has led its top engineers to leave and quit. Many of them have gone on to work for competitors or start startups that are now going to be competing with becoming the disruptors. And so Google, kind of in a fit of pick, says, okay, here's Bard. This is our AI-powered search engine. And to just illustrate how risky all this is for them, Bard made a mistake. It hallucinated a fact, which is that the Webb Space Telescope was the first telescope to take pictures of exoplanets, which isn't true. And that day, it lost $100 billion in market value, 9% of its value, over a single hallucinated fact. That's the risk. On the other side, you have ChatGPT trying to break up a New York Times reporter with his wife. and ChatGPT is on fire and everybody's all about ChatGPT. That's the innovator's dilemma. When you're an incumbent, when you're the big guy and you make a mistake, it gets hugely amplified. And when you're a startup that no one's ever heard of, oh, look at that cute new player on the block, and you're forgiven a lot of your mistakes. And so Google has to be super cautious. Now, they've stopped being cautious, or they're being less cautious. Why? Because of ChatGPT. And as a result, Jeffrey Hinton quit. And he's starting to now sound the warnings, along with Elon Musk and many other researchers, about AI. And so what ended up happening is, by being cautious, they got beaten to the punch, and now they're being incautious, and they're seeing a lot of criticism, and they're putting us all to a certain extent at risk. And so this is the complicated context in which we are living right now. Some of you may have already started using Bard, which is Google's AI-powered search. It's a generative search similar to Bing AI. And some of you may also, like I did, got an email this week introducing Duet AI for Google Workspace. So Duet is the answer to Copilot with Microsoft, and it's going to build ChatGPT-like tools into your workspace in Google, such as help me write an email. Imagine ChatGPT built into your Google Doc, ChatGPT built into your PowerPoint, Google Slides, ChatGPT, or a tool like ChatGPT, built into your Excel, so you can do natural language queries of your data. That's arriving. That was announced, and that's here. By the end of the year, and probably sooner, those of you working with Microsoft tools will have full integration of Copilot, and those of you using Google Workspace tools will have full integration of Duet. And even the words themselves are metaphors for how we want you to be thinking about this, which is, they are your co-pilot. This is a duet. You are a cyborg, part AI, part human. And that is the dominant metaphor for AI. This is not going to replace you, but you do need to learn how to use it and work with it. And the days of cutting and pasting from ChatGPT are numbered. We're going to soon have a place where this is much more convenient and easy to use. So Microsoft founder this week was speaking at a conference in San Francisco. He said that this isn't going to just disrupt search, it's going to also disrupt productivity and online shopping sites. He said you'll never go to a search site again. Now, Microsoft's founder, Bill Gates, is a little biased because he wants Microsoft to win this. He even said so. But he said because of the innovator's dilemma, he is putting it 50-50 that it's actually going to be a startup that's going to win this battle, not one of the incumbents. But all the incumbents are coming to play. Obviously, Google is facing competition from Microsoft and OpenAI, but also Amazon, Meta, and Apple have all made major strides and even announcements in the last few days about their AI-powered platforms. And then the folks that you've never heard of, the companies that are emerging potentially as startups, Pi, created by LinkedIn founder Reid Hoffman, Claude, and others. If you guys have any favorite AI tools that you're using that are not the obvious ones, throw them into the chat. And those are potentially the companies that may win this and be the Googles of the future. Google at some point was just a research project by 2 Stanford grad students. So it's possible, and it's very likely 50-50 it's going to happen. So I wanted to talk now with the panel about the search wars. And this is a complicated topic and one that I think has quite a bit of nuance. And so I'm going to start with you, Jeff. Can you talk about what is search versus generative AI and how they interact, and why Google feels like its search business, and Bill Gates says that its search business might be under some threat?
Sure. Yeah, I think everyone here is probably fairly familiar with search engines. Google processes 80 billion searches a day. And so I'm sure everyone here, when you've had a question and you've been walking around and you thought, oh, hey, who is in that movie? Or or what temperature do I bake my chicken at? You always turn to search engines. You either pulled up your iPhone or you went into Google. And a search traditionally is really just a prompt into a piece of technology that is just returning raw results to you. So it's not telling you anything. It's not processing any information. Really, the evolution of the generative AI in the search domain is leading to a scenario where, with tools like GPT-4 being integrated into Bing or Bard being integrated into Google, these search engines aren't just providing you with a list of results, but actually essentially reading and understanding those results and providing you directly with the answer. This is actually very similar to what Alexa was doing at one point in time, where you just ask it for a song and it would just play a song instead of giving you a list of 10 options that you could choose from. And so as we see more of this generative AI occur, it's really impacting the way that we interact with these technologies, because at a certain point you can think of search as an intermediary between what you're actually looking for and you're not going to Google because you want to go to Google. You're going to Google because you're trying to find an answer, and Google is giving you a lot of results. With these generative AI tools and chatbot functionalities, essentially you can skip that step of sifting through results and just get direct answers to your questions and inquiries. And I think that's where these companies are most concerned, that there isn't an established monetization model for that, like we have for advertising on a search engine, which we'll talk about a bit in SEO 101. And so that creates a scenario where the way that our children and the way that we in 3 years will search for things will drastically change. And these companies really aren't positioned to monetize that, which affects their market value in a pretty extreme way.
Perfect. One of the things that really confuses me about what's to come is, how will advertising work in a ChatGPT like setting? Jeff, do you have any ideas about what that might look like?
I do, because actually Bing tested this. So Bing actually had some examples, and I can try to find a few and share with the class via the chat later in this lecture. But essentially there was an example query where someone was asking about kind of what type of car to buy. And the chatbot actually explained what the top models of cars were. And then it said sponsored on one of the lines of text. So just now, like you go to Google or Bing and you search for something, those top results are advertising. I think what we're going to start seeing is these chatbots telling us information and then noting that it's been incentivized to tell us certain information. So it's kind of a very interesting phenomenon, because as a human, part of what we like about these chatbots is they act like humans. We've talked about our mirror neurons and how they inherently come off to us as trustworthy. But all of a sudden, when the chatbot we're talking to, we know they're being paid by Toyota to tell us to buy a truck. All of a sudden, that shakes our confidence a bit. And so I think we're going to see advertising in these chatbots. I guarantee it. In fact, there's no way we don't. These companies have to do this, or else their market value is going to collapse the U.S. and global economy at the same time. So we will see advertising in these bots, and I think it's going to be very interesting to see if that just destroys their utility. Which is then where we start, seeing very interesting things with third players who don't have the financial limitations that someone like Microsoft or Google has when it comes to making those decisions.
So we're going to go into your 5 definitions here. Is there anything else context-wise that you want us to understand about search and Google before we launch in?
I'll just probably share one fun fact, because we talk about ChatGPT all the time in GPT-4. The T in GPT stands for transformer, and Google engineers invented the transformer architecture in 2016. So just to give another point to how deeply embedded Google is into this AI race, even though we haven't been hearing about them because they haven't been releasing cool products we can use, they invented the modern transformer that OpenAI is even based on in the first place. So it's some interesting context there. A lot of what you said, Dan, is really great context. They've been a sleeping giant and they haven't figured out how to monetize this or roll it out, and that could be detrimental, or they could come back and come in hard swinging. So we'll see.
I really sympathize with the challenge that Google faces. And one of the things as I was researching today is I had no idea how much talent they've lost. There's just a deep amount. I mean, there's no more hireable person right now than an AI engineer. We're actually going to meet one in the wild next week who works at Disney. And yeah, it's a good place to be professionally. And Disney and Google has just been getting crushed. on that front, losing all this talent that they cultivated for years. So we're going to do our Google edition. As you can see, today's theme is largely about Google, because you can't talk about content strategy and search without talking about Google. And we've spent a lot of time talking about Microsoft up until now. So Google really deserved its fair share. So for our 5 definition segment, we're going to do the Google definition, the Google edition of the 5 definitions. And so over to you, Jeff.
That's great. Thanks, Dan. Okay, so we're going to cover 5 things today, something called Palm, Google Bard, Duet, a SERP, and quantum AI. So let's get into it. So the first definition we want to make sure everybody knows is Palm, or Pathways Language Model. So if you've been really keeping up, you may have heard of an AI model called Lambda, which was Google's original language model. Well, Palm is their current next generation version of their language model. So you can think of Palm just like GPT-4, whereas Google Bard might be more like ChatGPT to the GPT engine underneath ChatGPT. Palm is essentially Google's new language model. They are using this across all of their products. You're seeing it integrated now in Bard instead of their old Lambda model, and in Duet as well. What they really did with this model is they tried to build it in a way that there's a core model that understands language, and that they could train what they call nodes and pods onto the edges of the model to give it very specific use cases, like how to code or how to interpret language between different human languages like Chinese to English, etc., and translation tasks. Google Bard. So this is the ChatGPT competitor, or Bing's chat feature. So right now, Google is being very clear that this is experimental. That's a little bit of a marketing and liability protection based on what Dan shared with us earlier. It's an experimental technology, like all of this technology is. You can actually use this right now. If you go to bard.google.com, it works and functions very similar to ChatGPT, but it's hooked into Google search engine. It's also multimodal right now. So if you ask it for ideas for dinner, it will give you ideas and give you pictures of those dinner plates. So it's evolving pretty quickly. I'd encourage you to check it out. I can send a link in the chat. Duet AI, like Dan said, this is Google's response to Microsoft Copilot. We learned all about that, I believe it was last week in our lectures, and it's really an AI assistant for Google's cloud products. Their initial rollout has been focused on some of the more developer-heavy things like coding or chatbot development, but like Dan said, this is the platform that will be rolling out to things like Google Docs or even Gmail to help you incorporate AI into your workflow. And I think this is really important to me because when I think about it, I'm an engineer and I love to nerd out on this stuff, and I like to code, and I have local versions of AI models on my machine. But to the average business owner, that's not an investment you can or probably should be making. So I think if I'm when I put my CEO hat at Saltbox, we are really closely watching things like Copilot and Duet, because that's the most accessible way that instead of building a full AI model, I know that I will be able to use these tools in my existing workflows.
Duet and Copilot will change your life, full stop. You will not even be able to remember your life without it. It's going to be at least as transformative in your day-to-day life as the cell phone.
Absolutely.
And it's coming this year.
I heard a really interesting anecdote of somebody sort of predicting that we'll all be using AI to write emails to each other, and we'll start with just 3 bullets, and the AI will write this really long email, and then on the other end we'll use AI to summarize that really long email into 3 bullets, and we'll just be sending a bunch of noise at each other all the time. It'll be fun. SERP, what's a SERP? So this is important in the context of SEO. SERP is a search engine results page. So when people talk about search engine optimization, their goal is to show up on the SERPs. And this is also important to be aware of, because as we're seeing things like Bard or GPT-4 roll out, the anatomy of a search engine results pages is likely going to change fairly drastically over the next 5 years. We'll take a look at some examples of this when we go over some 101 stuff for SEO. And then finally, quantum AI. So again, just a nod to Google's deep expertise in this space. So Google has a quantum computing research team and a set of tools and libraries that are available to developers to help people push and innovate in this field of quantum research. Google was actually the first team to demonstrate computational tasks on a quantum supercomputer, i.e., They were able to actually do a calculation, not just do theory. The reason this is so important is when we talk about, like we talked about with large language models, one of the important components to the performance of artificial intelligence is computational power. Quantum computing takes what we can do right now on GPUs to a whole nother level, like 1000x what we're talking about right now. So Google is sitting on a hardware innovation here that could also be very, very impactful in this domain.
So our next section, we're going to talk about SEO. If you don't know what SEO means, you're in the right place. We'll define the term and then talk to you about how it works and why it drives your business results, and ultimately how AI can help.
Great. Okay, so I actually had to look this up, to be honest, but the fall of Rome was in 476 AD. Google processes over 99,000 searches per second. So I just want to put that in perspective. That means if you used Google 10,000 times a day since the fall of Rome, you would still not have used Google as many times as we as the human race use Google every single day. So they are very, very good at processing this information. And more importantly, as a business owner, this is a market opportunity. People are using this all the time to do research for products and services, to compare reviews for product and services, to find local vendors. If it's not obvious, these search engines are extremely important and have a lot of people using them. And I just can't overstate how ubiquitous these tools are in our own research cycles. You're probably doing it on your phone every hour of the day. So just wanted to put that into context. Just to go back to these ideas of SERPs, the anatomy of a search engine results page. If you Google something on your desktop or if you do it on your phone, you're going to see a lot of ads, these sponsored listings. This is what we were talking about when we were referring to how they don't really have a monetization model for these new chatbots. Right now, the majority of Google's income comes from selling ads on these pages. Well, it turns out that searchers, people who use the search engines, tend to actually ignore paid ads 70 to 80% of the time. So when we're talking about SEO or search engine optimization, we're specifically talking about organic search. Those are the non-advertising components of a results page. And those results pages can look very different depending on what you search. So on the left, we have diabetes symptoms where there are some ads, but then there's more organic results. On the right, you have dog food where above the fold, it's all ads, with the exception of a tiny little bit of real estate. So when we talk about SEO, which is the subject for today's lecture, we are primarily talking about organic search results. The advertising is an entirely different ecosystem. So how does a search engine work? If you can understand this even at a high level, then you can understand what's important for SEO. There's essentially, it comes down to three things. These robots need to crawl content, they need to index content, and they need to rank content. If you were building Google or you're building Bing, this is what you would have to be able to do as a company in order to build and host a search engine. So we'll go through each of these and why they're important. So crawling content, you may have heard people refer to things like search engine spiders or robots. Essentially, what both Microsoft and Google are doing is the first thing they have to do is discover your content for your website or your business. So they send out robots that crawl all of the links, the web, if you will. They crawl all the links between all this interconnected content, and they discover your content. And so when we think about SEO, one important thing is that we make sure that it's easy for search engines to discover and crawl our content. And that's something that you'll see us talking about in our lectures. The second thing they have to do is they have to understand the content. So this is a process called indexing, where Google or Microsoft gets the content. Okay, it knows it exists, and it needs to understand it and start to build some associations in its database. Okay, what is this content about? What searches would be relevant if I wanted to show this content? Is there information on this page that I don't have? Is this unique? Is there information about specific people, places, entities, etc.? And they go through an indexing process. This is where AI starts becoming very important. You might have heard a few years ago a ranking update for something called BERT, which was an early version of a transformer that Google was using to help understand content. And then the third and final.
I just want to say I really appreciate you highlighting some of BizHack's content and our ideal customer avatar, who is a Little League.
That was my pleasure. Yeah. I love it. And then finally, they need to rank your content. So So once they've crawled and discovered your content, then they have to understand your content. Finally, they have to rank it. And when we say rank it, what we mean is they have to decide what's more important to the user. Is it your article? Is it your competitor's article? Is it a different website? And so they look at things like, is this content authoritative? Is it relevant? Is the source of the information trustworthy? And fundamentally, these search engines have to do all three of these things really well to give the user a good experience when they actually type something in. They need to have relevant content in their index, and they need to understand what's good content and what's bad content. And so when we think about search engine optimization as a business, our goal is to do really well at all three of those things with our website and with our content, is make sure we're making it easy to be discovered, easy to be understood and indexed and optimized for those things. And then we want to look authoritative. So if you think about the fundamentals of how you win at search engine optimization, it really just comes down to four basic things at a high level. Now, these are all very deep and technical, which Nicole and Wendy will probably take us down the rabbit hole of a few of these things. But first, you need to research and select keywords. So if you want to show up in Google, you need to be deliberate about what you're trying to show up for. And you don't want to show up for things that people aren't looking for. So that's the first stage. You've got to know what your keyword targets are.
Can you remind folks what a keyword is?
Absolutely. So a keyword is essentially a phrase that someone searches for. So it sounds like we're talking about a singular word like dog, but if someone was searching for dog food, that could be a target keyword that your business has. Or it could be what we would refer to in the industry as a long tail keyword, which means a keyword with a lot of language and maybe not as much search traffic, but it's highly relevant for your business. Like, for instance, if you're a leadership coach that specializes in pet store leadership, that is a very specific keyword, a very specific long tail query, but it's really, really relevant if that's what you're in the business of doing. And if you are, I'm actually slightly surprised. That's a very niche business, but an example. The second thing you have to do is create great relevant content. Google wants to show good content to its user. If you want to show up for a certain keyword, you have to have content that Google and the user is going to think is relevant and good for that search query. So once you know what the words are, you have to prepare to produce content. And Wendy and Nicole are going to take us through how you think about both the research side and this content strategy piece. The third thing you need to do is optimize your content. This is probably the most simple line on this pyramid, but it's some of the most complex things to do. So there are technical things you can do to optimize your content. How fast does your content load? Does it have the right code in it? Does it have the right JavaScript and schema in the backend that feeds the robots information? But there's also editorial things you can do to optimize your content. Is it reinforcing the right language? Is it keeping the reader engaged and on the page? Is it driving up the click-through rates because it has very good descriptions and titles? There's all sorts of things you need to do to make your content not only be relevant, but rank well in the search engines and be good and engaging for users. And then finally, the last piece, which must have disappeared here on the top of our pyramid, but I'll speak to it, is you need to promote your content and build authority. So in order to rank, we don't only need to have good content that's aligned with our keywords and optimize it, but Google needs to view us as an authority. So there are some things you can do just with your own content to make sure it's an authority, like have original information or cite your sources or be clear that you're an expert in the domain. But promoting your content and building references to your content out on the internet can help reinforce that authority. So fundamentally, just zooming out, when you think about SEO at a high level for your business, the search engines are very competitive. And what you have to get right is you've got to select really good target keywords that are relevant to your business and have sizable traffic and people are actually searching for. Be prepared to create really great content, optimize that content, and then go promote that content to build your authority. So I think actually both Wendy and Nicole are experts here in a lot of that content strategy piece, and will take us through some examples of how you do that tactically.
Absolutely. Thank you, Jeff. Wendy, you're up. Did you want to share the slides, or would you prefer that I do it for you?
You can go ahead and do it. That'd be great.
Wonderful. So I'll do a quick intro and then we'll get started with your section. Stand by. Okay. So today's topic is AI for content strategy and SEO. We've talked about SEO, search engine optimization. Now let's talk about content strategy. And we brought the best in the business to help us with that. Wendy Lieber, my good friend, fellow EOer from Entrepreneurs Organization, is the co-founder of Content Bacon. which is an inbound marketing resource that helps companies basically create amazing content, whether it's a blog post, social media, or a book. And she has a really, you and I are really like very aligned. We're very similarly passionate about a couple things, which is one, we love to help our folks figure out their why they do what they do, and how to articulate that in a way that attracts people to you. And number two is talking about the power of storytelling, telling that story of purpose and that story of why, and using it to grow your business. You have 14 years as the president of Athena Marketing and Advertising before founding Content Bacon, and you're a member of Entrepreneurs Organization and travel globally for them, speaking and in leadership roles, but also a board of trustee for the Women in Distress. I really appreciate, Wendy, you being here today. You've been a great friend to me, a great friend to BizHack, and I'm really, I think we're all really excited to hear what you have to share about content strategy.
Well, thank you, Dan. And I'm excited to be here, and I'm learning so much in this new era that we're in. And I wanted to kind of bring it back a little bit today because there is so much going on. And in just reading the chats, I think a lot of people can feel overwhelmed with the amount of new information, new tools. And I think we all want to make sure that the doing that we're involved in is creating results, creating impact. And it can be very easy to get distracted and go down, rabbit holes of work, playing with tools, playing with ChatGPT. But at the end of the day, what are you trying to accomplish? So I'm going to spend some of the session here really not talking about AI, but talking about strategy, and then kind of link it to that. So I'm a big believer in the flywheel is the answer. And the reason I say that is because if you're looking at your business, it's really great to look at it from these perspectives. What are you doing to generate awareness, attract strangers, into your community? And then once you've got those strangers, maybe on your website and your social media, what are you doing to engage with them? And then as they're engaging with you, perhaps they've opted into something, they're in your database. What are you doing to continue to engage and nurture them so that they become some type of revenue stream? We refer to it as customers here. And then in terms of, thanks for someone on my team's getting fired. There's a typo, I'm just kidding. And then what are you doing to constantly stay in touch with your customers, to turn them into repeat customers, grow referral sources? So it's really a great way to look at your business. And there's different types of content that support each of those, which if you go to the next slide, Dan, I cover this. So when you're thinking about your flywheel, again, there's different things that we do to attract, engage, and delight. And again, these are just some highlights that you can look at when you're thinking about, well, what are we doing and how is it working? So, what's the point of content? Again, you can go to the next slide. Why do you need a content strategy? And, content is such an effective way to establish your brand voice. And it really is a great way to build that identity, to build trust and credibility with your audience, and ultimately drive business results. So in terms of how do you create a content strategy, what's involved, to me, this is so important, and where every company should start, no matter what your goals are. So if you go to the next slide, I break this out into, what are some of the components of a winning content strategy? And while some of this, and we'll talk a little bit about how you can use AI to maybe support some of this, this really has to come from you. What are your business goals? What do you want to achieve with your content? That could be driving more traffic. It could be increasing brand awareness. It could be a combination of all of the above, which often it is when you go back to that flywheel. You might need to focus on one area to get the flywheel moving, but then as you get it moving, you'll hopefully be focusing on all the areas. Another key thing is I was saying in our company, if you're talking to everyone, you're talking to no one. So really understanding who your audience is, who are you creating content for, and getting as distinct as you can, and really, building out those buyer personas, those customer personas. And then from there, creating, what does that content creation plan look like? What type of content are you going to create? What's the point of it going to be? Because someone that's maybe in research stage might require different content than someone who's evaluating you against your competition. So different types of content are required to, depending on where they're at in the journey. And then again, it's, your content is only so good as getting it out there. So creating a lot of content, using whatever tools are available is only as good as, okay, well, is it quality content? And then how are we getting that out there? So having a content distribution plan and really understanding where your target audience is spending their time. And I'm a big believer that the foundation, starts with your website, your email, and your social media platforms. And if you've got those working well, then it's very easy to build on. If you don't have those working well, then, spending money on paid may not get you the bang for your buck, because ultimately they're going to check you out. And if they're not finding content that, educates, entertains, inspires, they might not do business with you.
And then, one of the things I wanted to jump in and say is content has become a very technical field, and there's a lot of conversation around which keywords and meta tags and how do you optimize for Google search, because Google search is the front page of the internet. And if Google search doesn't index you and point people to that content, they're never going to see it. But never forget that the content is going to be read by and acted upon by a human being.
Yeah.
And so the way I like to think about it, and this is really at the core of everything that Wendy is saying, is you're writing for a human being, but recognizing that your secondary audience is the algorithm, because if you don't attend to the algorithm, no human being will ever actually see the content. So where I think business owners tend to get it really, really wrong is when they forget that they're writing for a human being. And this is fundamentally the greatest risk of AI to business owners that are forgetful of that fact, which is AI can generate content faster and more inexpensively than anything we've ever seen. But the content it creates is the Tin Man, all head, no heart. And Tin Man content ain't going to grow your business. It just isn't. Back to you, Wendy.
Yeah, no, thanks for saying all that. And, we have, again, a saying internally, we write for humans first and search engines second. I mean, and now we're going to have to add on some things to that. So you're 100% right. And one of the dangers, and maybe that's too strong of a word, but, I know a lot of people that have been using ChatGPT or other tools to write an apology letter to their wife or write a speech for their son's bar mitzvah. And, to me, it's like, and again, it's impressive, like what ChatGPT or Jasper can do. It's impressive, but I'm still a big believer that if I showed you or shared with you something that was AI generated versus, generated from the heart, you're going to know the difference. And that's ultimately in the end what will win. So I like that 10-man and heart strategy. So I
have a quick funny story about that. Jeff and I are buddies, and I got an email from Jeff, and I'm like, Jeff, ChatGPT wrote that. I could just tell, like, he was too formal. It was a little wonky. Now we're going to get better at having it mimic our voice. Yeah. But unless you're like a relatively skilled prompt engineer, your wife will know, and it will backfire.
Agreed. So what's the impact of a content strategy? And this, again, kind of supports why. It builds brand awareness, like we talked about, and that's super important. It establishes authority. And again, this supports, some of the SEO that Jeff was talking about. It enhances your SEO. Content is one of the key components of a winning SEO strategy. It drives prospect and customer engagement. So, if your website, for instance, is more of a brochureware right now, content and different engagement strategies can take it to the next level. So it's really a place where your community will come to time and time again to interact with you. Of course, it supports lead generation and conversion. And a lot of times this is where people want to start. It's like, oh, they want leads. And, I equate it a little bit to like networking. And we all know what it's like to go to a networking event and there's that annoying person that's just trying to get business and has no interest in getting to know you. And you just want to just get away from them, versus the person who wants to get to know you, wants to introduce you to this person over here because they can help you, builds time developing a relationship with you. Then you want to do business with them. And so companies that want to just jump right into lead generation and conversion without establishing that, I don't think will win. It certainly facilitates customer retention. This is an area that most companies miss, which is why I love the flywheel, because if you spend a lot of time getting a customer and then you stop talking to them, you stop keeping them up to date with what you're doing, you might lose them. And it's a lot easier to keep a customer and get referrals from existing customers than always go out and get net new. And I sometimes love to create a challenge with companies and say, if you never got another new lead for a period of time, and maybe it's, a couple months, and you actually just worked with what you have, what might you come up with? And there's so many great ideas, because we tend to neglect, the customers we have, the past customers we have, the relationships, always looking for that net new. So this might be an area where you've got a lot of low-hanging fruit and you just need to develop a content strategy to support that. And of course, providing value to your target audience is really key. Okay, you move to the next slide. No worries. And then supporting other marketing efforts. I do want to highlight this because, if you do webinars, like this webinar will turn into, like hundreds of pieces of content for BizHack, because they repurpose it in a way that's very effective. So having other marketing efforts and figuring out how content supports that is really important. Now you can move forward.
Yeah, and I wanted to just say really quickly on that point, like I did a little riff a second ago. It was just trying to be supportive of Wendy, but I was talking about the Tin Man, and Jennifer Noreen commented, hey, oh, that was a good TikTok. And then Nicole, and remind me of the name of the technology that does this, you can actually load this whole webinar recording and it'll generate little TikToks. What is that technology called?
Pictory. Pictory is one of them, and Opus.
Yeah. So my team, their homework assignment last week was to build TikToks out of last week's video. And, these moments that are organic, they tend to work best on social media. So I know there are a number of ways to measure KPIs for content. Please run through them, just because you need to measure success to know if what you're doing is working. And then I had when you're wrapped up, I had a couple questions for you, Wendy, about content.
Sure. Yeah, I mean, there are a lot of ways. Again, a lot of people will go right to number 4, conversion rate, super important. But all of these other things are indicators of, is your content effective or not? And you'll see like the last 2, referrals and testimonials, again, those can be really great tools and measurements to know that you're doing a great job with your content. So, it's super important to set this up. And, as a business leader, you want to make sure you're a marketing doer. And I love how you distinguish those two, Dan, because I think it's such a great descriptor. But you want to make sure that what they're doing is effective. And all of these things we're talking about is what you need to build as a framework so that you can measure effectiveness. So you're not just spending lots of time and energy. And yeah, you may have some, some great content, but it might not be getting the impact. And these are ways to determine, well, what may or may not be working.
Next week, we're going to talk about analytics and measuring success, and how do you measure success, and how do you leverage AI to help you measure success. But one really easy way to think about this is you have leading and lagging indicators. So traffic to your website is a good leading indicator because some percentage of them are going to want to be customers for you. Revenue is always a lagging indicator. That comes at the end of a process of wooing and communicating and selling. And so just know which ones are that are going to be predictive of future growth versus ones that are reflective of past effort. And that can really help you as you think about what your metrics are and organize your content strategy efforts.
So how can you use AI in your content strategy? So and I know Nicole is going to go more into this. I'm just going to kind of touch upon it broadly, but there are a lot of ways. I think one of the greatest things about AI is it's piqued our curiosity to learn how to use prompts to answer our questions and solve our challenges. And I'm a big believer that the quality of your life, is partly the quality of the questions you're willing to ask or are asking. And so I think that, using AI tools to brainstorm, to research, to do more personalization, there's a lot of things you can do with it to kickstart things. But again, you have to be able to answer some of the key questions in order to, one, know what to put in AI so that you're not just getting general information out. But then once you have that framework, using it for all of these things, content creation, the personalization, obviously different audiences require personalization. Being able to do data analysis very quickly is a great way that AI can help with your content strategy or determine the impact of it. SEO and keyword strategy, we'll talk a little bit more about that. Predictive analysis, A/B testing, chatbots are a great way to provide that real-time feedback and use AI to answer a lot of the questions that your audience may be asking. I saw someone in the chat before I came on talk about their content strategy is determining all the questions their audience might be asking and creating content around that. I think that's such a great way to start. That's often how we guide our customers. It's like, what are the frequently asked questions that your prospects are asking and you want them to ask, and develop content strategy around that. So that's kind of broadly some things you can do. And then, sorry if this gives you a headache, all of this. I know they'll be sharing the slides, so I won't go through this, but these are general prompts that can help get you started on different topics. So things like what topics are our customers currently interested in? How can we align our content with those interests? How can we communicate our unique value proposition through our content? Again, a lot of these questions can help get you started and get the brain moving and help you take your content strategy to the next level. And then the next slide, I go into SEO more specifically on how you can use AI and create some prompts for your SEO strategy. So, we talked about keywords. We talked about, using it to, what content opportunities are there based on popular trending keywords. So again, I won't read all of these, but there's some great prompts here that you can use to not only create that overall content strategy, but then even get more granular into specifics, regarding specific things you can write about, SEO prompts that can really get you more into the nitty gritty. So not only are you creating great content, but you're also ranking. And then the last thing I believe, I just wanted to some overall takeaways. So everything starts with your strategy, and this quote, which is a zillion years old, is as relevant today as it ever was. Strategy without tactics is the slowest route to victory. Tactics without strategy is the noise before defeat. So you need both. So as a marketing leader, really making sure that you have a strategy in place and that you're constantly revisiting that and having your team be able to say what it is super important. Ann Handley, who is a content genius and a leader in this for very many years, has a saying, content is king, not the kingdom. Content is not king, it's the kingdom. And it's really true. Like, content is such an important part of an overall strategy. But in order to create content that resonates, it has to make the reader feel something. It has to matter. If it doesn't, nothing matters, including finishing the story. So this goes back to what Dan was saying. Your content has to have heart. And AI is a tool to enhance your content strategy, not to replace the human creativity and the strategic thinking that goes into crafting an impactful content strategy. And I'm a big believer, this is kind of what we, adhere to in Content Bacon is, if you want to become a voice of trust, you must be willing to talk about what others do not in your space. You must be willing to show what others do not in your space, and you must be willing to sell in a way others won't in your space. So I think AI is not going to do that for you. You've got to be willing to do that. So if you have any questions, feedback, want to reach out to me, I'm always available. But I really appreciate this, and I know that Nicole's going to take this and show you some very specifics on how to put this in action.
That's right. Absolutely. So Wendy, first of all, I love this shot of you. It's really lovely. And
It's like a glamour shot.
It's definitely a glamour shot. And before we get to Nicole, I wanted to take one second, because there's a very regular theme in the chat from the day one of fear. And the fear is often from content creators, content copywriters, especially, journalists in some of the circles I run in, that AI is coming for us. And if you look at the jobs that are at risk, copywriting is listed as one of the top jobs at risk. You run a shop filled with some of the world's best copywriters. And I imagine when they're being, they're sharing with you in meetings, their worries, their fears, their concerns about what does this mean for us and the work we do. And I would love for you to share with me what you tell your team in moments like that.
Yeah, I mean, you actually covered it, or someone did. It's not necessarily going to replace you, but if you're not embracing it and figuring out how to be more effective, then it will. So to me, it just is another tool in the toolbox. And as a content creation company, our goal is to produce content that has an impact, that content that educates, entertains, informs, and inspires. How we create that, is really, in some ways it's like, it's none of your business, right? Like I say that jokingly, whether we're using humans, AI, or a combination of, we also, talk about AI as actual intelligence, and the combination of both. So to me, it's won't replace you unless you let it, because it still needs the ability to start with a strategy, fact check, format, make sure it has a heart. And I believe all of these tools, and I'm so impressed with, agencies like Nicole, where they've increased output by like 20, 30, 50%. And, we're always looking for ways to do that. But at the end of the day, it's all about impact. And so our team, it's like either, step up or step out, because, we're stepping up.
Yeah, the train's rolling down the tracks, either hop aboard or get run over. Thank you, Wendy. Thank you for your expertise. Thanks for being here today. So we're going to hand it over to Nicole. So now we understand the theory, we have the context. Now let's look at the tools and how they can work. And we're going to show you the tools in a different way than what we've seen them before. Up until now, most of the tools have been generative, creating content of different types, audio, video, image. Now we're going to create strategic content that is not destined to be seen by the end user, but rather will guide the use of resources and the business decisions of your company. This is really for the business leader. And so Nicole is going to talk about Jasper and one of the tools it has to help you develop your brand voice.
Yeah, thank you. And on the comment of eliminating jobs, we use AI, and I think AI can supercharge anybody in any role. if you know how to use it right. And so nobody needs to fear losing their job. They just need to get educated on how to use AI, and then they'll be indispensable. So we were talking about emotions, and this is another project of mine, emotionality. And you can take the quiz, see what your top emotional need is. And we use emotionality points. So there's 6 basic human needs, and we will use these needs as inputs when we are generating content to make sure that it touches on these emotional needs. So I just thought I would show you that real quick. This is emotionality.com. And so if we're doing an email sequence, we might ask that it contains at least 3 of the emotional needs, that it satisfies the needs with the content that's in there. So that's kind of, we want to put the heart into the content, and there are ways to automate that. And so as you just said, I'm going to show you Jasper. Jasper has a new feature as of a couple weeks ago where it will take your voice, and you can add the voice throughout every prompt and piece of content that you create. And all you have to do to add voice is enter the URL. And so for here, we'll do emotionalities. We'll see what it says for voice on here. And if you don't use Jasper and you're using ChatGPT, a way to do your brand voice is you can ask ChatGPT, put a piece of content in and ask it to describe the voice. You can try famous people. So I have a friend who does Joe Rogan with less expletives, and that a female friend. I use a combination of Michelle Obama and Neil Patel, because Michelle Obama is very wordy and long. Neil Patel is very short in marketing, and Michelle Obama has more heart. So the combination of those two sounds like me. If I'm responding to a Facebook post or something, Michelle Obama's voice is a great one for me. I just have to make it short because her AI thinks her voice writes in paragraphs and not sentences. So this is what it says the brand voice is for emotionality based on going to the website and checking it out. It says it's informative, persuasive, emphasizing emotional intelligence benefits through repetition, anecdotes, rhetorical questions, direct address, positive language, and bullet points for easy comprehension and reader engagement. And I can add some things, change it up if I want to change the tone, but this is what Jasper is saying about the voice. And then I can go into any of my content that I want to write, and it will retain the voice. And as you can see, you can write any kind of content imaginable. And so if you have bigger teams, this is great. Even if you have 2 or 3 people that are always writing, then it keeps your voice and it keeps the content in here and a historical record of it. It also is tied into ChatGPT. And you can see I can select my voice, and this is a client of ours, so I could select their voice. So I'm going to select that, apply it to chat. I can even include search. I can optimize for quality or speed. I'm actually going to do quality on here. And I will say, write about us paragraph for AI smart marketing. And then there's a feature here to enhance the prompt. And it will make it a more detailed prompt for me too. So it says act as a copywriter, which is an important part of this. So when you're defining what your brand voice is, you may say it's as a copywriter, you might say as an expert in, like if you are a doctor, you might say that you're an expert in whatever your field is. And this one's copywriter. So now it's going to do a little chat there. And this is giving me my about us in my brand voice. So this is a great, there were a lot of questions in there about what tools to use. We use Jasper as a tool, and we use ChatGPT when we're creating copy. And then in Jasper, I did a little, I mean, in ChatGPT, I did something fun for you for this session. We use the story brand format. Donald Miller and Dan was referring to that earlier. And then for ChatGPT, it's not going to do the full length right now because it's not going to give you your whole brand script, because ChatGPT does sort of.
I'm going to cut in for a sec because I love StoryBrand, and I wanted to just give people like a little micro lesson on it, because I think it's one, like whenever I tell people about it, like they all run out and go and buy the book, because it is really powerful and it's very aligned with something I'm very passionate about. And then you'll see how to utilize it. This is where I would have saved $7,500 that I kind of referenced at the beginning. John, if you could put the StoryBrand book Amazon.com link into the chat, so that folks who are interested can buy it. I don't get anything out of I don't have any relationship with these folks. It's not about that. It's just, I love sharing a great tool. So let me tell a quick story. Hang on. All right, so we're talking now about StoryBrand. We're getting close to the end. Thanks, guys, for sticking around. Love to have you here. So, like back in the day, I was a journalist and I was writing like dozens of stories, hundreds, even thousands of stories. And I always felt like a little lost about how to tell a story. And I knew that there was like a structure to story. I had heard this, whispers of this, etc. I went and got a master's degree, and that's what I studied, the structure of story. I studied, Joseph Campbell, I studied Carl Jung. It all started with Aristotle's Poetics. And I spent 6 years studying this stuff. And then meanwhile, some dude named Donald Miller was basically kind of boiling this all down into a book that really summarizes the main things that you need to know about story structure when you're telling business stories. So he did that really hard work of taking the theory from the Aristotle and Joseph Campbell and boiling it down into a methodology that really works. And that methodology he calls StoryBrand. And he wrote a book called Building a StoryBrand. We'll throw the link into the chat. And there's really just two quick things I want you to know. In this hero's journey, which every movie we've ever seen tells a version of, the classic being, of course, Star Wars, you have a hero who faces a challenge, gets help with a mentor or a guide, an Obi-Wan or a Yoda, and then they defeat, the Empire. And that story is the story of all of our lives. Alice in Wonderland, you venture out, you go down the rabbit hole, and then you come back to your safe space in the garden, changed forever, right? That is the structure of story. That is really the structure of how we learn as human beings in the world. And we are the heroes of our stories, which means that your customer is the hero. Your customer is the character going through this journey. And you are the guide. You're the Obi-Wan. You are the Yoda. You are the one who helps them get from here to there. That's StoryBrand in a nutshell. And the StoryBrand script, which Nicole is going to show you now how to build, is basically a way of creating content for your website, for your marketing material, for your emails that calls on these timeless storytelling principles and leverages them for you to position yourself as the expert who's going to guide them from whatever their unmet need is. So you, the owner of the business, positions yourself as a guide and as a mentor to help your customer solve a problem. That's really the essence of the StoryBrand technique.
Okay, so I created something for you and I put a link to this in the chat. I use ChatGPT. I have it switched over to 4. I have the paid version, and the paid version is much, much better when you're writing copy. I mean, it's much better for probably everything. The accuracy is a lot better. So I use GPT-4. And I created a brief version of this because you're not going to get the whole story in a prompt, because GPT loses its mind a bit and it goes off the rails. It can't focus for that long. So I did this while I was listening and answering questions earlier on this session, the 7-question brand story prompt. And this is an AI PRM prompt. There's a link. I'll post it again in the chat. And you want to make sure you're on GPT-4 inside your paid version with the AI PRM plugin. And if you go to public, you can search, you can just search the number 7, because, oh, now there's more people using 7. There was nobody else using 7 when I started it. But there's the 7-question brand story prompt. We've had 14 eyeballs on it already and 4 uses just since I put it up an hour ago. And then I'm going to click on that template, and it asks me the first question: what's your business name? And so I answer AI Smart Marketing, and it asks me, who's your hero, which is your customer, busy business owners, what's the problem? So it asks me 7 questions to get to a really condensed, simple version of the story brand. And in the prompt, I ask it to give me headlines, taglines, and elevator pitches. So with this, you'll get a list of 10 headlines that are according to your brand story, a list of 10 taglines that are in alignment with the story. And you can change your voice. After you read this, you might ask it to add some humor, or you might ask it to be more persuasive. There are different ways of recrafting these once you have it drafted to retain the voice that you have. We did some humorous ones, and I love those so much. There were only a couple that we'd actually use, but we added some humor into this after we got our first versions. Then it gives me elevator pitches. I asked for 2. This prompt gives you 2 150-word pitches, and it gives you 2 75-word pitches. And then I decided I needed an about us paragraph. So in ChatGPT, it doesn't keep your voice, it doesn't keep your information outside of the chat that you're in. So every time you have to redo a chat, you need to reprompt it with your brand voice and brand information. And so then I asked it to do an about us paragraph. It wrote a nice little about us paragraph. I can copy and paste this and use this on my website. And any other of the brand story kind of content I might need for my website, I could ask it to write a sales page on a particular product, and ChatGPT will do that. And it will use the story that it's created based on my customer being the hero. And in here, I can, because I have the AI PRM plugin that I pay for, I also have various words to describe my tone of voice. It's got Michelle Obama in here because I use that one. So I could use Michelle Obama. That's really funny. And then writing style. Sometimes you're going to write in analytical, academic. You might have it be informative, instructive. You might have it be persuasive. So you could be using the same story and just the context changes a little bit. So I could say to do a paragraph that's persuasive about our course. And it's going to use the information that I've already given it and change it to a persuasive situation. Because in having, like Wendy described, the types of content, we don't want to be salesy all the time. We don't want to be persuasive all the time. We want to be informative sometimes. So you can retain that same story and the same voice and change it to be an informative writing style. And AI can help with that. So if you have a landing page that's persuasive and you want to turn it into an informative blog post, you can do that with ChatGPT and retain the voice. So it's a tool that will help shortcut getting the kind of content with the heart and retaining your brand essence, which is it's really important that with AI, we we continue to keep the brand. Because for me, every moment that a customer interacts with a brand, whether it's online or in person, is an opportunity for emotional connection. And then we go back to these 6 basic emotional needs. And if you can satisfy these emotional needs through your content and your connection points, then you're going to have people emotionally connected to your brand for a long time if you keep satisfying these emotional needs. And so we use AI for everything. And we also do our best to keep the heart in what we do as well. So I could go on and show you some more, but I think if everybody can find your voice during this time, like that's the homework, is to find your voice and do your brand story. We also have a brand voice sort of think sheet that we created, and I can give you guys a link to that as well. So we have prompt examples in here, and we've got a list of description of different tones of voice. And you could just Google for a list of adjectives and decide what kind of voice you want to have, and craft your voice so that everybody who is using AI can be consistent on the same page with you. And that's it. That's it for
Thank
me.
you, Nicole. God, we could go on forever. I know that we're coming up against time. Thank you guys. Let us know in the chat and through the poll if this is meeting your expectations. We're here, trying to do our best to give you some great information and a great service. Nicole is sort of like a marketer from the future who's like come back in time to tell us about what she's been up to in the future and where we're all headed. And our job is to just try to catch up with her. And Wendy, someone who really kind of understands the power of content to really transform a business, and really feel blessed. And then, Jeff, of course, our resident tech geek guy who has forgotten more about generative AI than I'll never know in my lifetime. That's the team that came here today to really show us what's possible. So before we wrap up, I did want to ask Nicole, would you mind doing like a brief whirlwind tour of some other tools for content and SEO? We'll go a few minutes long, everybody, but I don't want to let go. We've talked about Jasper, but there's some other tools that you're gonna love, that you're gonna want to use, that aren't very expensive or free, that will help drive your content strategy. So let's take a minute and talk about those AI tools, and then we'll wrap up. Thanks, guys, for sticking around.
Yeah, so there's one thing so Wendy had talked about answering the questions that people ask. And that's something we talk to our clients about too, is what questions do people ask you? Because you should be able to answer every question they possibly have about your brand, your service, your products, whether it's your menu and your ingredients in a restaurant. You should be able to answer that on your website. So you want to know what people are asking. And there's a website called Answer the Public. And we've used this for a lot of different things. You can see decomposed granite, what people are asking about that. So it's called Answer the Public. You can do 1 or 2 searches for free. We have a paid account because we do a lot of searches, and we check on the search volume for different terms. And this is an SEO light tool, which is easy to use. It has cool graphics, and you can see what questions people are asking, and they categorize them. So here's all the how questions. And when you're doing YouTube videos, how-tos are amazing content. And you want to answer people like how to do these things. So how to design an AI marketing strategy. There's only 10 searches on that though. There's 2,400 on what a marketing plan is. I think this is a week. These are searches in a week. So you can see there are some of these things that I may have thought were important keywords, but there aren't very many searches on it yet. And so I might want to get in on some of these early, like marketing AI only has 880, and the trajectory is pretty good on it. So I'll probably do marketing AI as one of my keywords. prepositions. There's a preposition wheel. So this goes into just the different types of questions that people are asking. And I love this. And you can see some of these have little to no search volume. And some of them have a lot and aren't really what we're talking about. AI marketing tools is on the rise, and it's weirdly competitive for pricing on ads. But Answer the Public is a cool one. It has alphabetical order. You can export this as a CSV file and then get a list. So we'll pull the list of the top terms that we should pay attention to. We put it in ChatGPT and we ask ChatGPT to create a list of the top 10 blog posts based on ChatGPT searches. So somebody had asked the question of, do you use AI for SEO research? I do not trust ChatGPT because it's not trained on the most current information. There are tools that are AI, kind of expensive, more enterprise tools that do have SEO, like real SEO tools tied into them with AI. And that's with Robotic Marketer is one of those tools. I think they have SEMrush integrated. But for the kind of free, easy to use, I would not trust ChatGPT to give you the best keywords. What it can tell you is of these search terms, it can tell you which ones people search ChatGPT for the most. And so then we create a list of interesting, like let's just say 10, and then we'll take those and ask it to write compelling blog post titles, and then we'll write blog posts with each of the keyword terms. So this is one of the tools. You can also use some Moz tools for free, and that's MOZ for Canadians. And you can find out of your competitors who's got inbound links, where the inbound links are from, maybe grab some of their inbound links if you contact the sites that they're linking from. But Moz Tools has they've got a few free ones that are helpful. So that's a place to look. Answer the Public. I'm not sure if there's any others, Dan, that you want to go into, but I think these are the most accessible for people, easiest to use, easiest to understand, for a broad audience.
Yeah. I know Ahrefs is another just SEO tool that a lot of people use. And then my team was telling me that they wanted a tool, and I don't think we've mentioned it yet. Someone on my team remind me what it was.
Oh, this one wasn't SEMrush, I think, yeah.
SEMrush.
Yeah.
So that was another tool. So SEMrush, Ahrefs, and Moz, I think, are kind of like the three titans of SEO tools.
Well,
So
this SEMrush and so that one's more complicated. That's a lot more complicated, and you need to know more about SEO. It's not as easy to use. And Ahrefs is the same. It will give you a lot of information if you really want to get nerdy in SEO. The Moz free tools are the light, simple versions. Somebody just asked what an inbound link is. And an inbound link is a link, let's say, from my site to your site. It's a link from a news site back to your site. It is an indicator of authority on a specific topic, depending on what that link is. And so if I do a press release, I'm going to have inbound links for whatever I'm releasing to the press. And that's a way you can establish some inbound links and expertise in a crafted way. You can also ask people for inbound links. So from Dan, I might have him mention me on a blog post, or I might do a guest post on his website and it will link back to my website. Inbound links are really important because they indicate authority, which is something that Jeff talked about earlier, is that your website needs to signal authority. And with people linking to your site for certain words, that's an authority signal.
Oh my gosh, that was like the perfect segue to end the session, because we started with Google and we are ending with Google. So the great innovation that Google made back in the day was recognizing that the authority of a website is determined by inbound links. And that it really is the foundation of everything Google has built ever since. That, you know, the way you know a website is trustworthy is because people are pointing to it as a source. So let's talk about our homework. Use AI to define your brand voice and create your brand story. You can use ChatGPT to do it through the AI PRM and the prompt that Nicole did, or you could use the new Jasper brand voice tool. Many of us, including my company, do not have our brand voice defined, and now we can do it, and we can do it quickly and easily. The reason why it's really important is if you're going to have, you know, AI ventriloquize for your, you know, help you draft copy, draft emails, create website copy, create blog posts on your behalf, you better have it trained up in how you're supposed to sound, you know, Michelle Obama, but with a more uplifting tone or whatever. So we're going to wrap up. First of all, I just want to take us through the journey of where we've been on this little learning adventure today. We started off and we talked about Google, really the other titan of generative AI, how they are at the core of many of the technologies. They're the T in GPT transformer, but they're also right now suffering from the innovator's dilemma, which is they make one little error, they make one little hallucination, and they lose $100 billion in a day. At the same time, ChatGPT is eating their lunch. They're not happy about it, and they're starting to take bigger risks by pushing things out faster, taking a different attitude towards the risk that AI poses. There are no guardrails. There are no real legislation, at least in the United States, to govern this. And there is a race between Microsoft and Google and Apple and Amazon and, you know, Meta and dozens of other startups and the open source community that's trying to build their own platforms. And all of it is right now in a place where, you know, we're kind of benefiting as business owners because these tools are relatively unfettered and we're being given free or low cost access to them. But for society and our long-term success as a species, you know, we need to attend to the risks as well. We then talked about the search wars that have emerged between Bing and Google. Now, you know, 93% of global search is Google, and interestingly, despite this 6-month head start, Bing has not picked up more than I think about 0.5% of market share. So people are sticking with Google. It's a very sticky product, and now Google is going to basically be building its generative AI into its search, and I am very excited for what that product is going to look like. We talked about the 5 definitions. We gave you an SEO and content strategy 101. Basically, in summary, content is about human-to-human communication, intermediated by the search bot that crawls the internet to connect you to that content, and increasingly intermediated by AI that helps you draft it or summarize that content. So another way to think about it is the Google search bot has been between you and your user, and you have to attend to it. Increasingly, the tool that's going to help you create that content or consume that content will also be a robot, in this case, AI. And then we showed you the incredibly powerful use case of Jasper's new brand voice technology and how you can use it to create a story brand script in a matter of minutes and without having to spend thousands of dollars. And it's just one of many SEO, AI-driven tools for content creation and SEO to help you develop a great strategy. Today's session was a little wonky. It was a little bit a higher level. This was really designed for the business leader and the executive, you know, and this guides the doing. So wanted to quickly ask, Wendy, what was an aha for you today? What was a takeaway that you didn't know before you came on to the session today from today?
Yeah, I think, I don't know that there was anything that I didn't know, but I used to use, or we used to use, Answer the Public. We might still, I'm a little removed from that, but just Nicole going through that. And again, the story brand, you know, just like refreshing on that, and it just gets me excited on how to make sure that we're incorporating all of those things more easily. So
Love it. And what about you, Nicole? What was an aha for you today?
I just messaged the team. I need to create a blog post with all of this material before the class, because that was a missed opportunity to have people go to a blog post instead of to the doc I created. As I'm watching all the traffic there, it's like establishing authority. I need to do what I say. And so I need to put the reference information on my website where people can get it, as opposed to in a doc. So that was my aha. I'm like, oh man, I need to answer the questions on my site, like Wendy was saying, and not just in a Google Doc that I share.
And, you know, my big aha is just how uncertain, like there's certain things we know, right? And we know that these tools are going to become more readily available and more convenient to use, but there's just so much we don't know. Like, what is search going to look like by the end of this year and beyond? And, you know, I think it's this really, I mean, and the speed with which changes are occurring is accelerating. I mean, just this week, you had Apple, Meta, which is Facebook, and Amazon all announcing major AI initiatives. You know, I'm getting an email about, you know, Duet coming into my inbox, you know, momentarily. I think actually the ChatGPT kind of kicked off a little boom that we haven't even begun to see the full implications of. And when we, you know, reconvene, you know, in 3 or 6 months from now, so much is going to look different than what it looks like today. I think we're really at the very beginning stages of what's to come. I wanted to share a parting thought, you know, in honor of our good friend from Google, Eric Schmidt, former CEO. He said, I spend most of my time assuming the world is not ready for the technology revolution that will be happening to them soon. We really hope that you guys are enjoying these sessions, and we're helping you get ready for the technology boom that is here. Next week, we're going to be talking about Unit 7, which is AI for analytics, forecasting and prediction. And with that, you know, we got through, gosh, more than 54 questions from you guys. Thank you for asking them. Thanks to the panelists for answering them. And we'll see you guys in 1 week, same bat time, same bat channel, for our final session 7 of this masterclass series. Really appreciate you guys for sticking around. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Great job, everybody.